So anyway, we'll start at the beginning. This book follows Evangeline Fox, as you know, a young orphan with an odd hair color. And she grew up in Valenda, a town in the Meridian Empire, and she had a happy childhood filled with good memories of her parents. She worked in her father's curiosity shop, whatever, and her mom told her a lot of fairy tales because she was from the north and their whole history is fairy tales. We'll come back to that later, obviously. And her parents taught her to believe in magic and to always have hope and to believe in happy endings and in true love. And so, cut to the beginning, where Evangeline is at the Prince of Hearts church, and she's gone there because she believes that the person that she's in love with, Luke, is under a curse from her stepmother to be in love with her stepsister, Marisol. And so she wants to break this curse because she doesn't believe he truly loves her, and it's their wedding day, and she's like, you have to stop this wedding before it's too late. And so she goes and she asks Jax, she's like, please, you have to help me. I know you understand heartbreak. Like, your whole thing is that you're literally cursed with a deadly kiss, and every girl you've ever loved has literally died from your kiss. So, like, you have to understand what I'm feeling right now. Please, please, please. And he's like, you're kind of dumb. Life isn't full of happy endings. Like, what she thought would have made him softer made him more bitter. And so she's like, well, please, you just have to help me. You have to. And he's like, okay, fine. I'll help you in exchange for 3 kisses. And so that is where our story begins. And so he stops the wedding as promised, but he doesn't like break the curse for her, which is what she would have wanted. She also didn't ask for that, so that's on her. And so he turns the whole wedding party to stone. He has his other fate friend, Poison, turn the whole wedding party to stone. And she's like, this isn't what I wanted. Like, this doesn't help me. My true love is still there. He's just stone. And so he's like, well, I did what you asked me to, so I don't know what you want. And she was like, well, what I do want is for them to not be stoned. And so he's like, well, the only way that can be fixed is if you drink from that goblet over there and take their place. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. And he's like, here's don't get happy endings. And she's like, okay, and drinks. And so she becomes stoned. She's stoned for, I forget how many weeks, but for quite a while, for basically the whole duration of finale. And she wakes up in this strange dude's lab, and she's like, why do you look like a forest mage? And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you can talk. And so then she's like, where am I? And he's like, I'm Poison, you're in my lab. So she's like, did Jax ask you to wake me up? Because she knew that he had helped her, or he had helped Jax turn the wedding party to stone. And so Poison was like, nah, you want to forget about him. He's bad news. He fled to the north because he got into some tiff with Donatella, the like Empress's sister. It's a lot of drama. You don't want it. Stay away from him. And Evangeline is like, I don't want to be near him anyway. It's fine. Like, I never will go to the north. And so after this, she's reunited with her family and friends, except for Luke, who is notably absent, and she's not sure where she is. Luke is man, where he is. And so she's greeted by her stepsister, who had like baked her a cake and it was super sweet. And this guy, I forget his first name, but his last name's Nightlinger, because all the Nightlingers are the newspaper scandal sheets people. And he like interviews her, and he's like, she's such a humble hero, oh my gosh. And she's like, no, actually it was my fault in the first place, but obviously no one knows that. And so a few weeks later, she's summoned to the palace by Scarlet, and she's asked to represent the Meridian Empire for Noct Never Ending, which is a ball that potentially never ends, where the Prince of the Magnificent North has to choose a bride. And so there's this big party that goes on until he chooses it. So if he never chooses a bride, it has the potential of never ending, hence the name Noct Never Ending. And so she says, I'll go only if you let me take my stepsister. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. Yes, you can take your stepsister, because they have a super close relationship. So they're like, live, laugh, love that for you. And so Marisol and Evangeline go to the Magnificent North. And, oh yeah, and this is obviously because of some mysterious falling out with someone in the north. Obviously, you'll figure out who that is. Well, actually, you know who that is. It's literally because of Donatella and Jax. And so they go, and My notes say it's important to know here the history of the Magnificent North. It's all fairy tales. No one knows what's true, what's not. Even the people who are from there don't really know, except for the Fates, I'd say. The Fates, I think, know everything. But other than that, everyone's like, what's going on? And so, yeah, Evangeline is like super excited to experience her mom's like hometown, well, not hometown, but the place where her mom's from, and to experience the magic there, and to hopefully find her own happy ending, which was a big reason why she went. She was like, maybe this prince will help me get over Luke or whatever. And so she goes, they arrive in the north. She's expected at a banquet the night before Knocked Never Ending, and this is like super exclusive just for like the specific representatives of each house, of each country, empire, whatever. And so she has to go, but her stepsister can't go. So she goes, and she suspects she's gonna see Jax, but she's hoping she's not gonna see him. And she ends up seeing him, and she's like, bruh, why are you here? And he's like, because I can. And so he ends up being like, tonight you're using your first kiss. You're gonna have to kiss the prince. And so he like paints her lips with blood, and it's like, whatever. And she, why did I say it like that? Anyway, and she does as Jack says. When it's her turn to meet Apollo, she goes and kisses him, and Apollo is like in a daze after that. And it's like a little weird, but Evangeline doesn't really think that much of it in the moment. And so she leaves, and the next day her and her sister have some time to like visit town. Give me a minute. Thanks. Anyway, they go to sightsee the city and to look at the shops and to try the northern food that they've never had, because they have foods that in the north that they don't have in the Meridian Empire. And so they go, and eventually Marisol is like, she sees a cart going by that has a bunch of like rare spices and stuff that you can only get in the north. And she's like, can we split off? Like, I don't want to get this, like, it's like this fancy, like, apple thing that, like, the dragons, I don't know, it's made with dragon fire, and Evangeline wanted to try it, but the dragons make Marisol uncomfortable. So Marisol's like, I just want to get my cooking things. And so they split off, and Evangeline gets caught up, and she gets her, like, little apple thing, and then she goes, and she's, like, walking down, and she sees this shop, and there's a sign on it that says out for lunch, but she, like, wants to go in and see, because right on display is her favorite fairy tale. And she's like, I've always wanted to know how it ends, because I always forget how it ends, because the story Cuerse. And so she like knocks on the door, and she's like, hello, anyone there? And then this random dude with a helm comes over, and she's like, oh, it's like one of the royal guards or whatever. But he's like, don't go in there. That's like not it. People who come to this side of town get lost after dark. Like, you don't want to be here. And so she was like, oh, well, that's weird. I didn't realize it was dark. And so then she runs back, so she's not late for Knock Never Ending. She gets ready super quick, can barely do anything with her hair or whatever. And she sees her sister reading a scandal sheet, and she like reads the scandal sheet, and it basically says it's up for grabs who Apollo chooses. And there's rumors about Marisol that she's the cursed bride. Is that what she was called? The Cursed Bride? I think so. I get it mixed up because Lala is the unwed bride, whatever. But anyway, she's the Cursed Bride, and she's the Cursed Bride because of the whole thing with Luke. 2 weddings completely gone, or 2 weddings failed, and that's like weird. And so Marisol, that actually brings me back. I forgot to mention the whole thing with Luke, where he like disappeared after their second wedding attempt because he'd been like mauled by a wolf or something, and so then he had like all these scars, and Marisol's like, he left me, I don't know why he's gone, and he's just disappeared. And so yeah, anyway, so because of all this, there are rumors about Marisol in the Meridian Empire, and they made it up to the Northern Empire, and this is printed in this scandal sheet. And then it also says that Marisol was seen going into like spell shops and really shady places, and that she had gotten like spell books in order to turn Evangeline to stone because she's like jealous of her. and Marisol's like super distraught, and so Evangeline obviously doesn't believe it, and she's like, no, I know that's not true, like, don't let them define you, whatever, blah, 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 and then she starts to doubt, and so when they're on their way to the carriage, she's like, oh my gosh, I left my gloves in our room, let me go get them, and so she knows where her gloves are, but she goes into Marisol's room and, like, snoops around and is like, oh, these are only cookbooks, it's whatever, and so then Marisol sees her, and so Marisol's like, oh, you don't believe me, and it's like this whole big thing, whatever, but then she gets her gloves, they go, it's fine, and then they're at Knocked Never Ending. She enters the ball, and she sees Lala, because they're besties now, I guess, and yeah, she just doesn't really know what to expect as the night goes, but as Apollo comes out, he, like, looks at Evangeline, and, like, when I say looks, he, like, looks at Evangeline, like, you can tell there's something there, and Lala's like, I think he's gonna ask you to dance, and Evangeline's like, I don't know, but in her head, she's like, I think he is too, and so then Apollo's all like, I know it's customary for me to dance with 5 people, but I only want to dance with 1 woman. And so Evangeline is like fully expecting him to ask her, because the way he's looking at her, and then Lala thinks the same thing, but then he asks someone else. I forget who it was, but I don't know, one of the people from the major houses he asks. And Evangeline's like super embarrassed, so she like goes off to the drink table, and she's like, I'm just gonna hang out here for the rest of the night in the corner where no one will see me. And Apollo ends up coming up to her, and he's like, wait, please don't hate me, and he asks her to marry him, and she's like, oh my gosh, my fairy tale is really coming true, like, this is exactly what I wanted. Evangeline, honey, you're mixed up with Jax, okay? But anyway, they party till really early in the morning, she goes home, sleeps really late, and then wakes up to hot tea from Marisol, and they're like chatting, having a nice time, and then Apollo is like banging on the door, and he's like, please let me in, Evangeline. And he comes in and he's holding a scandal sheet, and Evangeline reads it, and it turns out all these girls are jealous, and they might kill her, and Marisol might kill her, and Apollo's like, I just needed to know you were safe. And she's like, first off, I don't think I'm gonna die. Second off, stop letting him print rumors about Marisol, because she's not gonna kill me, okay? And Apollo's like, okay, fine, but I need you to agree to, like, live at my palace with me so I can make sure that you're safe. And so Evangeline agrees to this as long as Marisol can stay with them. And so Marisol also goes. They move into, it's called Wolf Hall, I guess. I think that's what it was, something like that. Definitely Wolf something. And they go and live with him, and once they move in together, Evangeline starts to realize this is a little too good to be true. And she's like, this is fishy. He's like sending me all these love letters that like don't feel real. And the way that he's acting is more obsessive than in love, and like more infatuated than really in love. And so it's like, she starts to think about it, and she's like, Jax is a master manipulator. Like, and like, he's the one who asked me to do this, and he's the one who wanted him to fall. Like, there must be some connection here, but I don't understand, like, why he would want him to fall in love with me. Like, me getting married seems like it would be, like, work against Jax. Like, I don't understand. And so she, like, suspects that Jax put a love curse on her, but she can't understand why. So she ends up sending Jax a note, and she's all like, Jax, please meet with me on my walk tomorrow afternoon. And Jax is like, are you trying to threaten me? Like, hello? But this is the first time he calls her a little fox. Love it. Anyway. And so then they meet in Jack's carriage, and they go, and Evangeline's like, why'd you put a curse on him? And he's like, this is what you wanted. Like, you wanted to fall in love. And she's like, this isn't real. I want something real. And he's like, well, I'm helping you. And she's like, take the curse away. And he's like, I can't. I need you to marry him. And she's like, why? And he's like, I'm not gonna tell you. So basically what ends up happening he's like, I'll take the curse away only if you marry him. So once you marry him on your wedding night, I will take the curse away. And she's like, if not, what's gonna happen? And he's like, I'm gonna leave the curse forever, and you can leave him, but like, he's gonna drive himself insane. So it's up to you to decide what you want. She doesn't make her decision right away. We'll wait till we'll get there. And so Jax takes her to Tabitha Fortuna's house, and she is kind of a major person. Fortuna is one of the like major houses in the north. And so Jax is like, yo, here's what I need. She like has to use her second kiss, and so Evangeline kisses Lady Fortuna right on the cheek, and Miss Tabitha is then infatuated, but like in a friendly, like the way a grandmother is like infatuated with her granddaughter. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I feel like you know what I mean. And so she's all like, I'll do anything for you, Evangeline. And so Evangeline asks her to see the vaults. And so they go and see the vaults, and she's like, Jax, what are you looking for? I can ask her to help you find it. And he's like, ask her for her stone collection. And she's like, you're here for a rock? Like, hello? And so then she asks, and she's like, I don't have any rocks. I don't know what you mean. And then Jax is like, ask her about the Valerie Arch. And so Evangeline does. And then the spell breaks, and Lady Fortuna's like, oh my gosh, you're the one of the prophecy. You can't marry him, or else like the prophecy will come true and we can't have the Valerie Arch open. And Evangeline is then like, what on earth is going on? And so Jax gets her out of there as fast as possible. He refuses to answer any of her questions on the way back. And so then Evangeline is just like looking out the carriage window. And then they get back, and she ends up that night talking to Apollo because she wants to learn more about the Valerie Arch, and she figures since he's from there, he'll know about it. And she needs to decide whether or not she's really gonna marry him. And so she asks Apollo, and he gives her 2 stories, basically, because there are 2 versions of the story of the Valerie Arch. So I'm gonna read both of them just directly from the book because it's easier. He makes it clear that it's a fairy tale, so he doesn't believe that it's real. The stories about the Valerie Arch are among our cursed tales. Stories on the Valors can only be passed down via word of mouth. And in the case of the Valerie Arch, there are 2 different versions of the tale. Lucky for you, I know them both. The Valerie Arch is believed to be the gateway to the Valerie. In one version of the story, the Valerie was a magical prison built by the Valors. Magic cannot be destroyed, so the Valors said they created the Valerie to lock away any dangerous magical objects of power or foreign captives with the magical abilities. They said the Valerie was built to protect the North from forces who would wish to destroy it. But, okay, then there's like this little cute romantic moment with them, and then he continues. Unfortunately, the Valors lied. They built the Valerie to protect the North from its enemies, and they built it to lock up an abomination that they'd created. So this is where like the versions differ. It's like what's locked in it, and then it's also how to open it. No one knows exactly what the Valors made, but it was so terrible that the great houses turned on the Valors and chopped off all their heads. Alas, they did this before the Valors had locked away their horrible creation, so it was left to the great houses to imprison this abomination in the Valerie and seal the arch that led to it. Normally arches are locked with blood, but no one wanted to risk this arch being opened, so a special sort of lock was created, a prophecy. And so then he explains like how a prophecy works, but he doesn't know the actual prophecy, so he doesn't give it to her. But then he says, one of the versions of the story also says that the arch containing the prophecy was broken into pieces, and they parceled it out to the Protectorate, which is like an underground like organization that makes sure the Valerie Arch does not get opened. And so no one has ever found the missing pieces, but people have looked. So there's a prophecy, or the arch was broken into pieces, and in order to open it, you have to put it back together. So it's one of those. And so she's like, okay, interesting. And she ends up deciding that she is going to marry him, and so that the curse is broken. And so they get married the next day, and she ends up meeting Tiberius, and it's been rumored that Tiberius and Apollo, who are brothers, had a falling out, and she wasn't sure what had caused it, but it was really clear that like Apollo had been upset about it, and it just wasn't really like talked about that much. And so she met Tiberius, they danced together, and it was clear he didn't really trust her, and he was just kind of trying to gauge whether or not he could. And eventually their like wedding reception ends, and Evangeline's like confused why like the curse hasn't broken yet. And so she like goes to find Jax, and she's like, yo, why isn't it happening? And he's like, go to your wedding suite, it'll happen there, okay? Like, don't worry about it. So she goes, and Apollo's like got his shirt off, and he's lounging in bed, and he has like this weird oil all over him. And why anyone would do that ever, I don't understand, but Apollo is weird, so it's fine. And he was also under a curse, so I can let it slide, but whatever. And so she like gets nervous, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Like, it's like a little bit nervous, like, ew, I don't want to touch you, and also a little bit nervous, like, this is gonna change everything. And so she ends up drinking, in order to stall time, she drinks like this blackberry wine that's been set out for them. And then she goes and kisses him, and the spell breaks, and he's like, she can tell he's really hurt, and then all of a sudden he like collapses. And so she's like, oh my gosh, he's dead. Like, Jax killed him. I cannot believe he did this. And he killed him with my kiss. I can't believe it. And so she like starts crying uncontrollably, and the guards come in, and she's like, he's been killed. I think it was Jax. Like, you have to get Lord Jax. And they're like, no, we think you killed him. And so they like tie her up to a chair in another room, and she's like crying uncontrollably. Like, she can't stop crying. Even if she wants to, she's like, this is ridiculous, but she can't stop. And so Jax ends up coming in, and they're like tying her up and obviously like not being very gentle with her. And he's like, you're gonna treat your future queen like this? You're an idiot. And so he controls their emotions, sends them out, and he like takes her, scoops her up, and realizes like how intensely she's crying. There's literally puddles on the ground, and he's like, I think you've been poisoned. We need to get you out of here. So he takes her to some girl's house, and she doesn't know who it is. All she remembers from that night when they get there is that this girl makes her drink like an antidote basically, and Jax had to like keep physical contact with her for a full day. And so then she fell asleep, and she was asleep for like a full day. And so she wakes up in Jax's arms, and he held her like super stiffly. He acted like he didn't want to be holding her. I think he liked it, but he acted like he didn't, because that's Jax, obviously. And so she wakes up and she realizes she's at Lala's house, and so Lala reveals that she's an immortal fate, the unwed bride, and that she's destined to like always be left at the altar. And so she cries tears that kill women from a broken heart. And so it wasn't Lala who poisoned her, but she used to sell her tears, and she hasn't done it in such a long time that she had no idea who had them. So they realized that it's not Evangeline who killed her, it's not Lala, or who killed Apollo. And so Jax is also denying it's him, and they're realizing that like now Evangeline and Jax are the prime suspects. So they're like, we need to clear our names. So they decide to go on a journey together to figure out who actually did it. So first they go to visit another fate, Chaos, who is a vampire. It turns out it's the guy who had the helm on, and he lives underground, and so they only go at night. And so then Lala gives her like this fancy looking outfit. Like, Evangeline looked good, okay? And so they go to meet the vampires, and Evangeline's looking hot, and Jax is like, what the freak? And so they go, and Jax is like, yo, Chaos, who the heck killed Apollo? Like, what's going on? And so then Chaos is like, yeah, I don't know. We did get, like a while ago, we got a request for malefic oil or malefic oil. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's one of those. I like malefic better. I think that sounds better. But anyway, and it was ordered by a woman, and that's all he knew. And so also malefic oil can be deadly. So he's like, interesting. And so they're trying to leave, and Chaos is trying to stall them so that his vampires have like prey to come after when they, because they're like in the middle of their like changing ceremony or whatever. And so Chaos is like trying to get them to stay so that they'll feed on her because she's human, but Jax and her realize like that's not a good idea. So they're trying to leave, but all of a sudden someone's like, Ava, and she's like, it's Luke, the love of my life. And so she turns around, and he's like in a cage, and he's like, please, you have to set me free, they're gonna kill me. And she's like, what? You left me. And he's like, no, Marisol put me under a spell. All I remember is I had come to see you, and then all of a sudden she like touched like my neck as she was like taking my coat for me, and then all I could think about was her, and I was like obsessed with her. And I didn't realize it till I changed tonight because it broke the spell, but Miss Girl literally put a curse on me. And so then Evangeline's like, I thought it was my stepmother, but it was Marisol all along. And then she's like, well, these rumors about her going into like spell shops and whatever, like, oh my gosh, she really is a witch and all of this stuff. And so she was like, well, that's tea. And so then Luke is like, please free me. I'm still in love with you. Like, I don't really want this. I only did this because I wanted to get all of the scars off my face because Marisol refused to see me with them. And so like, please, I just want to be free. Like, I don't want to die. And so then she ends up freeing him, which she shouldn't have done because she's a little too trusting sometimes. It's what I love about her, but it's also like a little stupid. And so she lets him out, and he goes to bite her, and Jax like steps in front of her and gets bitten instead. And so they like leave. Evangeline realizes that Jax has been bitten with venom because there's 2 bites, one to feed and then one to inject venom. And Luke had injected Jax with venom. And so she was like, Jax, you need to be like locked up. We'll lock you in this like little thingy, like graveyard thing, whatever. I don't remember what it's called. It doesn't matter. And so he's locked up, and she's like trying to distract him. So she's like, yo, I've heard about this history with you and Donatella Dragna. Like, tell me about it. And so he tells her about how they met, blah, blah, blah. And then things like start picking up, and he's like, I really want to bite you. And she's like, no, you don't. And he like escapes from his cage and is like about to bite her. And she's like, you need me to open the Valerie Arch. And he's like, oh, you're right. And so then they're like super close, and he's like standing there, and he's not biting her, but he's like close to it. And she's standing there, and she's like not gonna move because she's afraid if she moves, then it's like game over. But also, she likes being held by him. I know she does. And he likes holding her because they're in love. And so they end up making it through the night. He doesn't bite her, so he doesn't become a vampire, but he's utterly exhausted after this ordeal. And so he like is super close to falling into an intense sleep. She thinks he's being over dramatic, but he's like not. He's like dead tired. And so she tries to find Lala's house. She can't find it, but there's a house with this like bell ringing, and bells like tell you something. Like bells carry messages. And so she's like, I must go in here, I guess. And so she goes into this house, lays Jax down. He like basically immediately falls asleep. And so she starts snooping around this place because she doesn't know where they are. And it turns out they're in Jack's house. And so she finds copies of the Ballad of the Archer and the Fox. And she turns to the end, and the pages are ripped out, or turns to the end and the pages are blank. So she doesn't know the ending still. And she's like, it's killing her because she wants to know. And then she continues looking through his books and finds a spell book that she recognized from Marisol's, because she had learned from Jackson Lala that a cookbook that she had seen was actually a spell book, and like a really dangerous one. And so she looks through it, finds a love potion spell, realizes that the person who ordered the malefic oil was Marisol for this love curse, this love potion. And so she realizes that Luke's story was true. Like, Marisol had put that curse. And so she also learns from a newspaper that she finds that Tiberius and Marisol are now engaged. So she's convinced that Marisol has done another little love spell on him. And so she looks for the antidote. She makes the antidote, and she's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go. I'm going to clear my name. I'm going to clear Jax's name, because I think that Marisol probably killed Apollo and probably poisoned me. And we're going to get this straightened out. And so she gets the truth serum, which was the antidote, and she goes to the palace, only leaving a note because she can't wake up Jax because he's dead. And so she goes to the palace and runs into Marisol. She doesn't want to run into Marisol, but she does. And so Marisol is like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're okay. Like, I've been so worried. Have you really? No, you've been falling in love with... No, you haven't even been falling in love. You've been forcing someone else to fall in love with you. You haven't been worried. Idiot. So anyway, so then Evangeline ends up confronting Marisol and is like, I saw Luke and he told me what happened. And she was like, oh my gosh, you're so, like, I did do that, and I'm so sorry. I was just jealous of you, and I promise I didn't do that to Tiberius because I learned my lesson with Luke. Like, it just wasn't real, and I like want something real, blah, blah, blah. Evangeline ends up being like, okay, I forgive you. It's fine. Like, I've also done bad things. And she tells Marisol what she did, which was ruin her first wedding. And Marisol is like, I can't believe you would do that to me. I can't forgive you, and actually, I'm going to turn you in. Hey, Evangeline's in here, and she just told me that she killed Apollo. She just confessed to it. And all the guards come rushing in, and Tiberius comes rushing in. He's like, my heart, which is exactly what Apollo said when he was under a love curse with Evangeline. So Evangeline was like, he's definitely cursed. And so he brings her into like his room and starts questioning her. And she'd brought this love potion in like a Fortuna's Fabulous Flavored Waters or something, and they're like enchanted, so you can't resist drinking them. And so he drinks it even though he hates it, and the true serum starts doing its work, and he's like telling her all about the protectorate and about how he had to kill her. Like, he had been trying to kill her because she couldn't open the Valerie Arch. Like, it was too dangerous. He couldn't let her do it. And so he continues on, and one thing leads to another, and she starts asking him questions, and the true serum's doing its work. And so the guards come in, and she is like, so can you tell him that I killed him? And he was like, no, I can't. And she's like, yeah, because you know I didn't do it because you're in truth serum. And he's like, yeah, because I did it. And so he confesses, and he's like, it was an accident, whatever. And he gets arrested, and Evangeline's fine. And so then after this, the Apollo's head guard approaches Evangeline, and his name is like Havelock or something. And he is like, yo, I gotta show you something. And this other girl's with him. And they're like, yeah, so actually Apollo's alive. He's just in a sedated, like, state, basically. And so Evangeline's like, how is this happening? Like, was that Tiberius who did that? It wasn't Marisol. And then she starts realizing how much Jax has manipulated the whole situation ever since she's gotten to the North. And even before that, like, he even had admitted that, like, he had wanted her there, so he had done what it took to get her there. And so he had just been manipulating everything. And she was like, oh my gosh, Jax did this. How did I not see it before? Like, obviously Jax did this. Jax denied killing him, but Jax is the one who put him in a sedated state so that I would open the Valerie Arch. Like, he's gonna hold this over my head now. And so that's basically where it ends. She's like, I can't believe Jax killed him. And, like, that's it. So that's Once Upon a Broken Heart. Hopefully this isn't too long. I don't know.